Welcome to the Time of the Reason podcast show. We are here to promote thinking. Now, more than ever, is the time to revive reason. Unless we do so, humankind is riding a one-way runaway train into oblivion. Let's get started. Oh, Dan, welcome back to another episode of the Time of the Reason podcast show. And, we're delving into deep things now. And today we're going to talk about, gosh, it just drives me crazy, toxic masculinity, uh, and where we're at in this global society. I want to start out first to welcome back all the listeners and viewers, and thank you very much, because without you, we these conversations may go nowhere. We just appreciate your interest in listening to two guys delve into these deep issues that a lot of people don't really even want to touch. So before we even get started, Dan, let's just get serious right off the bat, and let's not joke and smoke. We are in an information war. We're in a global information war for the hearts and the minds of those people that are watching and listening. Um, yeah, and there's no doubt the world is in chaos. The world's confused big time. Men don't know if they're men, women don't know if they're women don't know. We that's something else. But and it's all being blamed. If it's not being blamed by propaganda, it's all being blamed somewhere on us men and masculinity. And that's, the whole toxic masculinity thing just blows me away, especially the way it's being used in an effort to emasculate men. I mean, give me a break. We're in a cave 15,000 years ago, and we got the fire going, right? The men are in there with the women. And all of a sudden, there's a saber-toothed tiger at the entrance to the cave, and it's looking at us like we're the next meal. Who's going to jump up? The children or the women? No, the guys are going to jump up. They're going to grab their spears. They're going to get violent, and they're going to protect the nuclear family or the nuclear tribe from that outside threat. I mean, isn't that kind of how it was, Dan? There's toxic masculinity in full flare.
Well, it wasn't toxic masculinity, as masculinity and nature's definition of masculinity. So those who have a complaint about the way that we're programmed as human beings, their complaint isn't with me, their complaint is with God.
Or something, a higher power, right? Well, wait, let's jack it up. We'll move it to modern day. You're in a bar somewhere, you're with your significant other, your wife, your girlfriend, whatever, and some guy goes by. Listen to this, men and ladies. And somebody pinches your girlfriend or your wife right on her buttocks, and the guy laughs about it and gets right up in your face and threatens you. Like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Back down and say, hey, that was nice. Thank you very much. Move along. No, you're probably not going to do that. You're going to jack the guy up, and they would call that level of violence toxic. And like you just said, it's what men do. It's, why can't men just be men? Why can't men just be masculine the way God made us? That's where we're at. And then we'll talk about the new masculine and why and how we can become and we can move out of that and do something different for our nuclear families as men. And maybe we draw the sword as the last resort. But let's delve into that.
Well, I think that the world has changed since the saber-toothed tiger day, and we've instead of relying on the alpha male to eliminate the tiger, we've decided to have game wardens and the like to deal with saber-toothed tigers. But we also employed at our expense police forces to do the same thing and to take some of the more
Threats,
unattractive necessities of life, such as imprisonment and crime and punishment and the things, sort of take it out of the hands of the everyday human being, and it's no longer necessary for every male to be the alpha male. And probably some of the toxic masculinity comes from non-alphas pretending they're alphas. But underlying all of these discussions still remains the looming nature, which is, we have to keep in mind, is really in control of this. But our world has changed since the saber-toothed tiger days. We now deal with other threats. And what has become totally and completely obvious to me is that Joseph Goebbels, from the Nazi fame, would have never, ever been so impressed as if he were here today and could see what the value of propaganda and information is. In fact, our whole the wealth of people is dependent on their ability to convince you, whether you're a consumer or whether you're a citizen, but to convince you that their position is right and you need to follow or do or buy whatever they suggest. The whole world is now dependent upon accurate information. So, what is accurate information? Accurate information is what we consider truth. And then we have to even go so far as to define truth. And I would say that truth is when several unbiased, objective humans can look at something and reach the same conclusion, then perhaps you're coming close to what truth is. But in order for us to function and in order for our families to function, we have to rely on truth. We have to rely on reliable information, and it is reliable. It's reliable to the extent it dictates how we're going to spend our money, how we're going to spend our time, who we're going to elect, and so on. So we live in an information age, and the burden of protecting the family has shifted from the club and the guy scratching his head behind you to a good ability to determine the value of information that you're being presented with. Because as I see it now, my God, I don't know what a percentage is, but I would have to say that if you see 25% of what you see and read is accurate and could be considered truth under some sort of objective definition, I'd be surprised. So I've taken it upon myself, and I see that this is the battle. This is what mankind is going to be fighting in the future, is the ability to listen to somebody else's information and to critically evaluate that information as to its veracity or whether it's just propaganda.
Yeah, you've raised a lot of good points. Yes, you're right. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister for the Nazi regime under Hitler, would be impressed. And because now, rather than just putting out things on the radio or in print, now you have a global communication technology called the internet. So, this misinformation or disinformation or malinformation can get out there on a massive scale. And you're right, Dan. You just look around and there's a few things that don't pass the sniff test, and we'll get to that. So if you're not, we've heard that the truth shall set you free, right? So if you're following the truth or looking for the truth, that means, if you're not, you're actually enslaved by the beliefs or the whims or narratives or ideologies of others. Because if it doesn't pass the sniff test, which we've talked about, the human information, intuition sniff test, common sense, then you walk away. You're bold and you just say, I reject that. That's a lie. That's not true. I'm sorry. A penis is not a vagina. And I'm coming back to that because that's one of the most apparent illogical misinformation, ideological bunch of nonsense. I mean, if it doesn't, if it doesn't match up with the science or the reality of what they're trying to say, I mean, I can tell you I'm an oak tree. I don't look like an oak tree, but yet some in society would say, well, you're a bigot against oak trees. But, it's maddening. Even get into discussions like that because that's just ridiculous. So don't ever underestimate the value of your first impression when you hear or read a news story or somebody's narrative or ideology that, the hair on your neck stands up. That's saber-tooth tiger stuff. And it's time to get away from that. Or it's totally illogical. You'd have Copernicus and Galileo and, Einstein laughing their rear ends off, going, man, those people are stupid. So you pointed it out, Dan. Critical thought, logic and reason, and be bold. Gosh, there's nothing that irritates me personally more than somebody believes the lie and they don't have the cojones to reject it. That's what that's toxic masculinity, because you're helping or you're part of the problem. Man, we have got to be bold and reject this nonsense. That's the new masculinity. Let's protect the nuclear family and our kids from these people with bad intent. Dan, you were saying to me the other day that you don't even need an army now to defeat your enemy. All you need is a group of hackers, a team of hackers to disseminate disinformation or malinformation with a nefarious intent to take down a culture, a society, a family. Look at what's going on to the nuclear family, which the socialists and the communists love here in America. You infect the children in school and in our colleges, and then you destroy that nuclear family. We're going into another subject, but then you really lay the groundwork and the success for those people that are trying to destroy family or society or a tribe, a country, a nation, whatever. That's the new masculinity. Reach down, grab them, be bold, and reject the lies. They hate people like that, don't they? They would say that guy is a conspiracy theorist. They'd have a name or a label for somebody that actually stands up for the truth. He's a right-wing lunatic fanatic. Really? Just call me whatever you want. You're the one that's spreading all the lies or the person believing all the lies that are being spread. Stand up for yourself. My gosh. Sorry, Dan, don't let me run off here going crazy. It irks me, man.
Let me help you out a little. I have done quite extensive study on theory of mind and developed kind of my own theory of mind with my own flavors, but not too far from others. But I realize that fully one half of your intellectual capability, of everybody's human's intellectual capability, is their intuition. And the other half is their rationality, their sense of logic. And it's interesting that there are two types of reasoning that exist, deductive and inductive, one going from the general to the specific and the other going from the specific to the general. Well, inductive reasoning is what governs our intuitive mind. And it has several advantages. One is it's fast. When you get, if you're thinking of, we're talking about the sniff test. When somebody presents something to you, you automatically have a reaction to that. And it may be a favorable reaction or it may be against, but you haven't had time to evaluate it rationally, but you do have something to start from. And if it doesn't pass the sniff test, which is a colloquialism for saying if it's contrary to your intuition, check it again. And these are, when we'll talk more about this as we get into critical thinking more and more. But this is step 1 and 2 of critical thinking. When presented with something, a source of information, and you're evaluating it, your first thought your first thought needs to be, does it pass the sniff test? Does this really make sense? And even before you go on to further analyze rationally and deductively, ask yourself another question that relates to intuition. What would a third party, a logical third party, how would he react to this? Do I think it would pass the sniff test of John Krotak, for instance? So I've got to ask these two questions. And if the answer is no, I'm probably better advised. My experience has shown me this. I'm better advised to not waste any more time on this particular uh, vein of study because it's almost certainly going to bear fruitless results. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't be open to new ideas and new concepts. You certainly should. But if you need a quick evaluation, there's nothing to rely on like your good old intuition. And ladies, men have intuition too. And believe me, it's a valuable tool, and we should never diminish its place and its ability to keep us out of trouble.
Yeah, a lot of exactly. And there's so much going on here. And most of this is commonsensical too. I mean, and what you just said, and I'll support what you say, follow your intuition. And that's that part of that sniff test. These were probably the solutions. Think for yourself. Be bold. Reject the lies, the untruths, these non-commonsensical narratives, illogical, right? And I would just implore men to be men, be part of a new masculine approach. Humanity depends on it. Be open to new, and I'm going to support what you just said. Be open to new ideas and concepts, but walk away. Don't waste any time with people who are stuck in my side bias and are not willing to get off of it. If somebody believes a lie and they want to believe a lie, and you've led them to that, what's that old axiom? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. If you get that horse to water and he's just looking around, doesn't want to drink, it's time for you to get on your own horse and get out of Dodge. Just let it sit there. And maybe he'll finally take a sip. Who knows? But that's where we're at. We're in an information war, and men, be men. Protect humanity. Reject. Be bold. I mean, let's do it. We can get this done. Or can we? Or are we too far gone? I don't think so. I always have hope. I have great faith that this entropy, which is a whole other concept, this news or information entropy, is always overcome by the truth. I believe that. Sooner or later, the truth is going to rise. And my wife used to tell me, you're better off telling me now if you're up to something than let me find out about it. That's a real world axiom, and she was right. Every time I've tried to hide something or not be truthful, I've always gotten in trouble. And even though it stings sometimes when the truth comes our way, or it's better in the long run. The truth will set you free. Any final thoughts, Dan?
Well, just that for your audience, stay tuned because what we talked about was the most unreliable uh, source of our rational minds. We need to go on to the processes involved in critical thinking, to where we'll marry both the intuition and the logical to determine whether we're dealing with a truthful piece of information or a piece of information that's been doctored by someone who has a goal that may or may not be contrary to your best advantage.
Exactly. And and one thing too, and I'll leave with this, or another thought that I had. It's very unbelievable to me when I see people who I would deem intelligent, with
Oh, sure.
credentials, with
Yeah.
PhDs, but people like that are still or have succumbed to things that make no sense at all. And so if you don't if you can't personify truth or have this aura around you, then you have no credibility. And that's what we just found out with the person in what was the at Harvard, the lady that just stepped down and resigned.
Budding gay, yeah.
We just saw that. Here's a person that comes across as very intelligent, has a doctorate, and then you find out that she plagiarized the work of other people. That kind of fits in with this as well, that
Yes, it does. That's and what she was awarded her doctorate for was misinformation. And congratulations, Harvard. You didn't catch that one.
Yeah. So all I can say is be bold, keep your eyes and ears open. Don't believe everything you see or read, and certainly don't fall into the trap before it's too late. And the next thing you know, you're that horse at that watering hole and you're thirsty and all that information is gone, but you're stuck because all the people that follow the truth have galloped away into greener fields. Dan, good seeing you, bro.
Good talking to you.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Time of the Reason podcast. Dan and I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Time of the Reason podcast show. Now it's time to think. Logic and reason work. It's only common sense. Do your part.